twisted toys. As the teenagers crept towards the abandoned mansion, their breaths created small puffs in the chilly night air. The full moon illuminated the imposing Victorian structure, casting eerie shadows on its decaying walls. They pushed aside overgrown vines and climbed through a broken window to gain access. Inside, they were greeted with musty air and creaking floorboards. The moonlight barely filtered through the dirty windows, but it was enough to make out the creepy details of the interior. Tattered curtains, broken furniture, and cobwebs covering every corner. Undeterred by the spooky atmosphere, the teenagers explored each room with curiosity. But as they made their way up to the attic, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When they opened the door to the attic, they were met with a chilling sight, an army of twisted and demonic toys staring back at them with glowing eyes and sinister smiles. A shiver ran down their spines as they realized that this wasn't just a case of an overactive imagination. These toys were real, and they exuded an evil energy. A loud bang sounded behind them as the door slammed shut, trapping them inside with nowhere to run. The rumors about this house and its dark past were all true. Panic set in as they heard strange noises coming from the shadows. Suddenly, the toys came to life. The dolls started to dance, the stuffed animals growled, and the action figures fought one another. The board games opened, releasing a swarm of spiders that crawled toward the terrified teenagers. One by one, the friends were attacked by the demonic toys. They screamed and tried to fight back, but it was no use. The toys were too powerful. As the last teenager fell to the ground, the toys ceased their attack and returned to their lifeless state. The next morning, the police found the abandoned mansion sealed shut. No one ever entered the mansion again, and the evil energy surrounding the house lingered for many years. Some say that the toys still come to life at night, continuing their mission to trap and attack anyone who dare to enter the cursed mansion. Others claim that the spirits of the teenagers still haunt the house, forever trapped in the attic with the demonic toys. No one knows for sure what happened that night, but one thing is certain: the abandoned mansion on the hill remains a source of fear and mystery for the people of Whispering Willows. However, there was one person in Whispering Willows who wasn't afraid of the mansion. Her name was Lily, and she was a psychic medium who had always been fascinated by the supernatural. She had heard about the mansion's dark history and knew that she had to investigate it for herself. One moonlit night, Lily stood before the mansion's gates, sensing the evil energy emanating from the house. Determined to face it, she pushed open the creaky gates and entered the mansion's grounds. As she approached the mansion, Lily felt the presence of the spirits that lingered there. They were restless and angry, and their voices whispered in the wind. Lily made her way through the abandoned mansion, her senses heightened by the energy surrounding her. She ventured deeper into the house, determined to find the source of its evil. She searched every room, looking for clues and listening for any signs of life. But the house was silent, save for the occasional creak of a floorboard. Finally, she came upon a locked door at the end of a long hallway. Energy pulsated and emanated from behind the door. Lily retrieved her trusty lock-picking tools and began to work on the lock. It took her several minutes, but the lock finally clicked open, freeing the door. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit laboratory. Strange machines hummed and whirred in the background, and shelves upon shelves of glass jars, filled with bubbling concoctions, lined the walls. In the center of the room, a massive oak table stood covered in sharp tools of all shapes and sizes. Some were stained with specks of blood. Suddenly, Lily heard a whisper coming from the corner of the room. She turned and saw a figure shrouded in darkness. The figure slowly emerged from the shadows, revealing itself to be a man in a lab coat. His face was twisted and contorted, and his eyes glowed with a demon's light. The man introduced himself as the Mad Toymaker, the creator of the demonic toys that had attacked the teenagers. He explained that he had been experimenting with dark magic, trying to create the perfect toy that would be both beautiful and terrifying. But his experiments had gone wrong, and the toys had gained a life of their own. Lily could sense the Toymaker's energy, like an electric current pulsing through the air. She knew that he was not entirely human. There was a dark and primal force within him, a chaotic mix of man and demon. His powers were beyond anything she had ever encountered, unpredictable and formidable. It was as if he held the strings to a powerful puppet show, controlling everything around them with a flick of his wrist. The toymaker revealed that he had been waiting for someone like Lily to come along. He needed her help to reverse the curse that he had unwittingly unleashed upon the mansion. Lily was hesitant at first, but she knew that she was the only one who could help the spirits trapped in the mansion. Together, Lily and the toymaker worked to break the curse that had been placed on the mansion. They spent long hours in the laboratory, poring over ancient texts and casting spells to break the curse. As they worked on the intricate mechanisms of the cursed toymaker's creations, Lily began to see a different side of him. She noticed how his hands trembled as he carefully placed small gears and springs into place. She saw the furrow of his brow as he concentrated on each delicate detail. At first, she thought his hesitance and caution were due to his mad scientist persona, but as they spent more time together, she realized that he was a lonely and tormented soul, trapped in the mansion for decades, unable to leave and haunted by the spirits he had unwittingly unleashed. Despite their differences, Lily and the toymaker grew closer as they worked together to break the curse. They shared stories of their pasts, and Lily learned that underneath the eccentricity and obsession with toy-making, he had once been a loving husband and father. After months of hard work, they finally succeeded in breaking the curse. The evil energy dissipated from the mansion, and the trapped spirits were able to move on. Lily said her goodbyes and left feeling a sense of satisfaction and closure. But she couldn't shake off thoughts of the toymaker from her mind. She worried about him constantly, knowing that he was still haunted by his past. One night, she returned to the mansion searching for him. As she called out his name, she heard a whisper coming from the laboratory. Her heart raced as she made her way towards it, hoping to find him there. Lily crept towards the workshop, her steps barely making a sound on the old, creaky floorboards. She could see the toymaker through a gap in the door, hunched over his workbench with a furrowed brow, lost in thought. As she entered the room, he turned to face her, and a warm smile spread across his face. Tears glistened in his eyes as he whispered her name, his voice trembling with emotion. She stepped closer and wrapped her arms around him, feeling the weight of his guilt and sadness. "I had to come back," she murmured, "to make sure you were all right." His grip tightened around her, his body shaking with suppressed sobs. "I'll never be okay," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "Not after what I've done." She pulled back slightly and looked into his tear-filled eyes, seeing all the regret and pain etched onto his weathered face. Placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, she said, "There's no use dwelling on the past, but you can use your talents for good now. You've already helped so many trapped spirits in this mansion. Maybe there are others out there who need your help too." He let out a defeated sigh, but then something sparked in his gaze. He nodded resolutely and said, "You're right. I can't change what I've done, but I can make a better future." Side by side, they worked through the night, pouring their creative energy into something beautiful and pure. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, they stood back and marveled at their masterpiece. The toymaker turned to Lily and took her hand in his. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for believing in me and helping me find my purpose again." Lily could sense the darkness within him slowly fading away, replaced by a newfound joy. Lily's eyes overflowed with tears and gratitude, her heart swelling with a sense of blessed relief. The toymaker's smile in return was like a beacon of hope, reminding Lily that not only was he her friend, but also a formidable ally in their quest to spread love and positivity across the world. Together, they would face any obstacle that stood in their way. This was just the beginning, and Lily knew that with the toymaker by her side, they were unstoppable. The abandoned toy factory. As they approached the outskirts of Linville, Angela and Amy felt a chill creeping up their spines. The town seemed to be in a permanent state of twilight, with dark shadows lurking around every corner. They soon found themselves standing in front of the infamous toy factory, its looming brick exterior, casting an ominous presence over the town. Despite the town's warnings, the sisters couldn't resist exploring its desolate interior. The air inside was thick with mustiness and decay, and as they made their way through the corridors, they stumbled upon a room frozen in time. Conveyor belts lined with broken and decomposing toys watched them with grotesque grins, and the dolls themselves began to move. With a loud clanking, they sprang to life and charged towards the sisters like possessed soldiers. Angela and Amy were trapped, unable to escape as the dolls closed in on them. In a moment of desperation, the sisters recalled a secret passage that had been passed down to them by their great-grandmother. They quickly located it and escaped into a room filled with machinery and crates. As they caught their breaths, they heard a faint whisper and discovered a frightened girl hiding inside one of the crates. Angela asked if the little girl was all right. "I was kidnapped," the girl whispered, "and they want to turn me into one of them." Horrified by this revelation, Angela and Amy knew they had to get her out of the toy factory immediately. They pushed a crate towards the exit, all the while devastated that the possessed dolls were clawing at the door. The owner of the factory, Mr. Stinson, appeared with a sneer on his face. "Trying to steal my cargo?" Despite their fear, Angela and Amy stood strong in the girl's defense, refusing to cower before the man who sought to harm her. They were determined to do whatever it took to save the innocent girl. Angela's muscles tightened with fear and anger as she stood before Mr. Stinson. His cold, piercing blue stare and sinister grin sent shockwaves down her spine. Angela spoke with authority as she accused him of manipulating innocent children into becoming an army of emotionless puppets. Mr. Stinson only laughed, his voice laced with arrogance and a twisted sense of power as he boasted about his hold over the toys. A high-pitched shriek pierced the air, causing Angela and Mr. Stinson to freeze in their tracks. The lifeless dolls surrounding them suddenly sprang to life, their once serene faces now twisted into snarls as they lurched closer. But then a second scream echoed through the factory, louder and more desperate than the first, bringing the dolls to an abrupt halt. A silent understanding passed between Angela and Amy as they locked eyes. Without hesitation, they charged forward toward Mr. Stinson, their hands reaching out to grab onto his arms. Mr. Stinson fought against them, but the sisters refused to let go. As the trio struggled, the dolls scattered throughout the room crumbled into tiny dust fragments, the enchantment that had bound the toys for an eternity shattering. Mr. Stinson's resistance only grew stronger with each passing moment. But Angela and Amy held on tight. Summoning their last reserves of energy, the girls rushed forward, overpowering Mr. Stinson and forcing him to the ground with their combined strength. The struggle was intense, their muscles straining with effort as they fought to subdue the wicked man. After what seemed like endless moments of chaos, they managed to subdue him and restrain him with a thick length of rope. An eerie silence fell across the room as the last of the dolls morphed into dust, leaving only remnants of their once haunting presence strewn about the floor. Angela and Amy rushed to the trembling girl's side. A sense of relief washed over her face as she realized she was finally safe. In a split second, Angela's eyes widened with recognition as she gazed upon the girl before her. It was Emily Connor, the missing girl from Linville, who had been plastered on countless "Have you seen me" posters around town. It was then that they realized they had stumbled upon something far more sinister than they could have ever fathomed. "We have to call the police," Amy whispered. Angela nodded in agreement as they gently guided Emily towards the exit. They exited the disheveled room, leading Emily away from the horrors she had endured within the toy factory. As they stepped into the fading light of day, a sense of relief flooded through them, but they were aware that their journey was far from complete. With Emily now safe, Angela and Amy dialed 911 on their cell phone. The police dispatcher listened intently as they recounted the harrowing events that had unfolded in the abandoned toy factory, mentioning Mr. Stinson's involvement and his sinister plans for innocent children like Emily. Within minutes, a squad car arrived with flashing lights and blaring sirens. Officers swarmed the area, securing the scene and taking Mr. Stinson into custody. Angela and Amy provided their statements to law enforcement officials, explaining every detail they could recall about the dolls coming to life and the imminent danger that had threatened them all. As the investigation unfolded, the town of Linville was gripped by a sense of unease that lingered in the air. The discovery of Mr. Stinson's diabolical operation sent shockwaves through the community, and parents held their children a little tighter after that, haunted by the thought of what could have happened to their loved ones. News spread rapidly throughout the town, and soon national media outlets descended upon Linville, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within the abandoned toy factory. Journalists interviewed Angela and Amy, hoping to capture every chilling detail of their encounter with the possessed dolls and the valiant rescue of Emily Connor. Amidst the escalating media frenzy, Angela and Amy stood steadfast as protectors, their unshakable devotion to shielding Emily from any further harm fueling their every move. They were keenly aware that apprehending Mr. Stinson was just the beginning of a long battle to secure the safety of not only Emily, but all potential victims. In the aftermath, a fierce camaraderie formed between Angela, Amy, and Emily, an unbreakable trio united by a shared mission for justice and a determination to help Emily heal from the unspeakable trauma inflicted by Mr. Stinson's heinous actions. Their relentless pursuit for closure and resolution would bring much-needed peace to all those involved. Abandoned shadows, whispers of a forsaken house, shrouded in darkness and tainted by evil, echoed throughout the tiny town of Fairvale. As Emma, David, Rachel, and Mark approached the crumbling structure, the air grew thick with an ominous energy. The once grand mansion lay decaying, its windows broken and doors hanging off their hinges. Undeterred by the warnings of the townspeople, the four friends ventured inside, their footsteps muffled by layers of dust and debris. In the center of a dilapidated room, amidst scattered debris and peeling wallpaper, sat an ancient Ouija board. Its wooden surface was worn down by the years, the once vibrant letters and numbers faded with age, and the edges chipped and splintered. Despite its weathered appearance, an eerie energy emanated from the board. As they stepped closer, the planchette moved on its own accord, beckoning them to join in on the game. Curiosity and fear mingled as the group placed their fingers on the planchette. All sound disappeared, swallowed by the darkness. Shadows danced on the walls as the friends whispered incantations. The planchette spelled out cryptic messages from restless spirits. Emma's heart pounded as the planchette spelled out her name, each letter sending a shiver down her spine. In an instant, the temperature dropped and an otherworldly chill filled the room. Suddenly, the planchette shot across the board with a burst of energy, causing chaos to erupt. The ground trembled beneath them, and a suffocating darkness consumed the group, trapping them in a terrifying dimension beyond their understanding. Their hands shook with terror as they attempted to break the connection with the planchette. It refused to relent, moving on its own as if controlled by unseen forces. The spirits mocked their fear and spun tales of torment. A deafening silence fell over the room, and Mark's eyes widened in horror as a chilling message materialized on the board. One must stay. Terror consumed them as they came to the realization that the malevolent forces they had unleashed were demanding a sacrifice. Hands shaking, they pleaded for forgiveness as they watched the planchette's movements become wilder and more unpredictable. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared in front of them, its cruel intentions clear. The room filled with a sense of dread as they realized the consequences of their actions. Rachel's hand shook as she reached for the Ouija board, the planchette trembling beneath her fingertips. Her friends stood around her in a circle, their faces contorted with fear and anticipation. A cold gust of wind blew through the abandoned house, rustling the curtains and extinguishing the candles that lined the floor. As the horrifying truth dawned on Rachel, she realized that they had unleashed a malevolent being, hungry for human souls. In a last-ditch effort, she pleaded with her friends to flee while she bravely faced the dark entity alone. She uttered the chilling words, "I'll stay," sacrificing herself to save the others. Time seemed to halt and reality twisted as blood-curdling screams reverberated throughout the house. Rachel's form dematerialized into darkness, consumed by the wrathful spirit possessing her. The friends scattered in fear, their panicked footsteps echoing off the crumbling floorboards. Rachel's sacrifice would forever haunt them, a reminder of the dangers of meddling with the occult, and in that forsaken house, the malevolent force lingered, satisfied for now but always craving more souls. Emma, David, and Mark were consumed by guilt and haunted by memories of Rachel's screams in the cursed house. They couldn't shake the feeling of being observed by a malicious entity, but they attempted to continue living their lives as normal. Emma's dreams, however, were filled with images of Rachel's face and the sinister presence that took her life. Unable to bear the uncertainty, Emma ventured out on her own in search of the truth and stumbled upon a startling discovery. Emma was determined to uncover the truth about her friend's sudden disappearance, so she delved into forbidden texts and ancient lore, despite the risks involved. But as she read on, a grim revelation shook her to the core. The entity they had encountered fed on despair and claimed souls. Despite the unsettling rumors and cautions, Emma continued forward, weighed down by guilt for bringing her friends to such a perilous location. With the wisdom and cognizance of ancient legends, Emma returned to the infamous abode. The air crackled with danger as she stepped deeper into the unknown. Ghostly whispers sounded around her, enticing and warning her all at once, but armed with the knowledge of those who came before, she marched forward, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of the notorious dwelling. Emma cautiously made her way down the dim, decaying hallway, her senses on high alert. A lingering feeling of someone's presence sent chills down her spine, as if an unseen force was silently observing her every move. The musty smell of neglect and decay filled the air, making each step feel heavier than the last. She couldn't help but wonder who or what might be lurking in its shadows. The Ouija board remained in the center of the room, untouched and undisturbed, surrounded by scattered tarot cards and half-burned candles that flickered in the dim light of the room. Emma carefully lit candles of various sizes, each one casting its own unique glow, adding to the mysterious aura. As she chanted ancient incantations passed down through generations, the air hummed with a palpable energy. Unseen forces were at work. The flickering candlelight danced across her face as she delved into the realm of magic and spirituality. It was an otherworldly experience, one that could not be fully described in words, only felt through the senses. In an instant, a spectral figure appeared before Emma, its form twisting and contorting in a grotesque display of fear manifested. It emanated from the very depths of her mind and dreams, taking root in reality, its shape both familiar and terrifying. For it was not human but something ethereal, a creature born from her deepest anxieties. Every ounce of Emma's being urged her to flee, but she was paralyzed with fear as the entity advanced toward her with an unearthly intensity. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the ancient book, continuing her recitation of the ritual. The candles flickered, and sweat trickled down her forehead as she chanted the final words to banish the entity from our realm forever. Emma crumpled to the floor, every muscle in her body spent and screaming in protest as she surrendered to the exhaustion. She struggled to catch her breath, her chest heaving with each gasp. The sweat-soaked fabric of her shirt clung uncomfortably to her skin, a reminder of the arduous journey she had just completed. Emma's heart pounded with a surge of adrenaline as she leaped to her feet, recognizing that it was no longer safe for her to remain in the perilous situation. Exploding out of the decaying house, still gasping like a suffocating victim finally drawing air, she sprinted away, desperate to escape the all-consuming darkness that had threatened to devour her whole. With one last glance at the twisted windows and crumbling walls of the house, she was reminded of the unspeakable horrors that had unfolded within its clutches. And even though she'd escaped with her life, every time Emma closed her eyes, the image of Rachel's tear-streaked face burned into her mind, like a hot brand. The pain of that memory, a constant reminder that some wounds never truly heal. Tormented Grace. Grace was an outcast. Her shoulders were hunched under the weight of constant torment from her peers, whispers, sneers, and cruel jokes that followed her every day. Seeking solace, she climbed up to her dusty attic, where she stumbled upon an ancient Ouija board, covered in cryptic symbols. Desperate for vindication, she placed her trembling fingers on the planchette and summoned spirits from beyond. As night fell, Grace sat, cross-legged on the attic floor, with only the Ouija board as a companion. With bated breath, she asked for justice against those who had wronged her. To her horror, the planchette began to move on its own, spelling out chilling messages of revenge. In the darkness, sinister shadows took shape and taunted Grace with wicked promises. A malevolent presence filled the room, fueled by her pain and the scars of relentless bullying. Whispers echoed through the stillness, a reminder that there are dark forces at play in this world beyond our understanding. She frantically tried to move the planchette away from the board, but it seemed to have its own will, dragging her fingers along with it. As the room plunged into darkness, Grace heard sinister whispers and felt cold hands brushing against her skin. The spirits she had summoned were no longer under her control, their vengeful powers growing stronger by the moment. With an overwhelming dread, Grace watched as the planchette spelled out a chilling message: sacrifice for redemption. She knew then that she was trapped in a game she never intended to play, bound to an entity that demanded blood in exchange for her freedom. Desperate to break free, Grace attempted to say goodbye to the spirits, but they refused to let her go. A dark, malevolent energy filled the room, causing shadows to twist and contort into terrifying shapes. The air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating, as the planchette moved erratically across the board in response to the unseen forces at play. Goosebumps erupted along Grace's skin as she realized that her only chance at survival was to make a sacrifice, a desperate attempt to appease whatever entity had been summoned. Fear coiled in her stomach as she searched for something, anything to offer up in exchange for her life. As she desperately searched for a solution, the walls of the room seemed to close in on her, creating a sense of foreboding and fear. She knew time was running out, and she needed to find an answer before it was too late. In a moment of sheer terror, Grace offered up her body as a sacrifice to the unseen forces that threatened to consume her. Reality warped and twisted around her, threatening to tear her very soul apart. And when silence finally descended upon the attic, it bore witness to the devastating aftermath of the unspeakable event that had just taken place. Grace's heart raced in her chest as she struggled to catch her breath, grateful to be alive but forever scarred by what she had experienced. The town remained unaware of the horrors that had unfolded in that cursed attic, but for Grace, there was no escaping the consequences of playing with forces beyond her control. Her soul now belonged to the spirits, and she would forever be haunted by the nightmarish ordeal she had unwittingly initiated. Grace's traumatic experience had unleashed a malevolent entity, a sinister being that now possessed her body and mind. In the desolate attic, dust dances in the air as moonlight filters through shattered windows, casting ghastly silhouettes upon creaking floorboards. Whispers fill the void, an eerie chorus of mocking voices tormenting anyone who dares to enter. The townspeople tremble at the mention of Grace's name, for they whisper of her tragic fate, how she disappeared without a trace after delving into the dark arts. But they do not speak of the horrors she faced, of the demonic forces that dragged her into eternal damnation, forever cursed by her foolish curiosity, lost to the seething darkness that consumed her soul.